Paul wrote his letters between, we're guessing, but they're pretty good guesses, 50, 49, 48, and 63 if Nero killed him. So late 40s, mid 60s. I never had this person for a teacher, but Chris Becker from Princeton used to say, "There's no development in Paul's thought. There's no the guy. These are only letters from 15 years. How much development could you have?"
I had him as a teacher.
You had him as a teacher. Okay, that's his thing. You know, Paul is Paul, and if you see different things in Paul, you see them because he's writing to a different situation. But it's not because he's rethought his fundamental worldview. That gets reshaped when Jesus appears to him, and he starts to think about the ends of the ages converging on us, and Jesus' resurrection being the beginning of the general resurrection of the dead. All of what Paul was thinking before changes. But after that, he's the same guy. And we only have this very small window on his life. He was 60 probably when he died or something. I'm making that up, but somewhere in there. And we have depending on how you count, somewhere between 8 and 13 letters over about a 15-year period. A very small bit of what Paul was about, but Becker doesn't see any development in Paul's thought there. Roman society, imperial provinces get governors. So, Paul calls himself a Roman citizen in Acts. He doesn't mention this in his own letters, which leads some people to question it. Other people say there's no really good reason to question it. It's in Acts. Luke wrote it, we'll take that at face value. I don't have a big investment in whether Paul was a Roman citizen or not. But I will tell you that 6 million, we think 6 million citizens were in the empire. 70 to 100 million people. And 6 million of them are Roman citizens. So it's a slim portion of people who are citizens. How do you get to be citizen? Birth. And that's how Paul says he got it. His parents were Roman citizens. We don't know farther back than that for Paul. You sometimes get to be a Roman citizen as a favor for service. Somebody, I don't know who, I just saw this in a secondary source, and I don't know who they were citing. They thought maybe Paul got his citizenship by providing tents for the Roman army. Probably somebody got the Roman citizenship for providing tents at some point for the Roman army. That's a sort of favor you could do and get a reward of Roman citizenship, but there's no data on that happening for Paul. You could also be freed from slavery by a Roman citizen, and when you become a freed person in a Roman citizen's home or household structure, you might get citizenship, or in discharge from military service. So it's kind of like the GI Bill for people in the provinces. They have a shot at getting in the in the structure in a more sustainable way after military service. The whole of Roman society is built on patron-client structure, and I'm going to talk, I think, more about this next week because I want to talk about the letter of Philemon. If you're interested in doing homework, you can read that one chapter letter for next week, and we'll talk about the household structure. But for now, it may be enough to say there's a pater familias, there's a guy at the top of the household, and then there are layers of important people, starting with sons and other family members, and then freed people that work for the head of the household, freed slaves. Most slaves were freed at some point in their life. It wasn't a kind of generation-to-generation chattel slavery institution like North American slavery was. Unless you were agrarian, often peasants who were slaves were not freed. Other people, the sources say by the age of about 35, and I don't know if life expectancy is 45 or something maybe. It's more like in retirement you're freed from slavery. I used to say it was like getting your student loans paid off, but in any case, it's not a forever institution, and there are lots of freed people who stay on in a household and work for the same guy after they've been freed from slavery. And then there are slaves in the household. Slaves could own property, including slaves, which is a little weird. But so slavery is a rather different institution in the ancient world. It's still, if I knew better, I'd say this differently. It's still a bad idea. You don't have control over your body. You don't have control over. There's a whole lot about slavery that's a really bad idea in any culture. We in North America probably just made it worse than it was in Roman society, which isn't exactly something to brag about. In any case, everybody is either a patron or a client in any relationship that you're in. So when Paul doesn't take money from the Corinthians, he likely doesn't take money from them because he doesn't want to set up a client relation. He doesn't want to be their client and for them to be his patron. He's much less leery of that with the Philippians. In fact, in Philippians, he thanks them for a gift, and even though he says, not that I really needed it, I know how to be a base and I know how to abound. He's still grateful for them and for their partnership and for their patronage of him as he's in prison. But in Corinthians, he just refuses support. And as you read, I teach 1st and 2nd Corinthians a lot also, and as we read Corinthians, it's clear you wouldn't want to be indebted to those people either. There's just too high a price to pay. We've all had relationships like that, where at some point you just think, yeah. And so Paul has to make decisions like that in his own ministry. What about Greco-Roman religion in this period? We all had to learn Greek gods who had Roman names in, like in high school or whatever. Some of those appear in Acts. That Paul and who is it? Barnabas are mistaken, or is it Apollos? Are mistaken for Zeus and Hermes in Acts 14. All of a sudden, I can't remember who Paul's hanging out with. It's Barnabas. Yeah, they think one of them is Zeus and the other is Hermes, the messenger of Zeus, and they start to worship them. And Paul and Barnabas are like, no, they're Jews, and the people are bowing down to them. I mean, this is you think you're going to get struck by lightning at this point if you're Paul and Barnabas. But this is how they are received in Iconium. And then Artemis shows up in Acts, and you probably talked about the Temple of Artemis last week. And all the silversmiths want to make their money and their little household gods, and their business drops off when Paul starts preaching Jesus, and people give up on getting household gods at Artemis or little idols. So traditional religion is alive and well. However, there's a lot of other stuff going on in the period. At Luther Seminary, our strategic plan talks about, our mission statement talks about educating leaders for mission. And our strategic plan takes that up and says, mission in a world of many cultures and religions. And that's how we imagine our world today, even our North American context today. Many cultures and religions. And it's certainly true in the Roman Empire. one of the most interesting elements of religious experience in the Roman Empire for New Testament scholars has been the mystery religions. Because Christianity seems to have some things in common with them and could at least have been mistaken as a mystery religion. Mystery religions had personal initiation at their core. I don't know if there's any women in here who are in PEO. Sorry. It's a little sorority. It's not a mystery religion. It's a sorority that works with education, and I was actually initiated in it when I was about 30 years old. I'm a PEO, and yeah, but it's really it's very interesting. They won't say there's elements of mystery in this, as there would be in any fraternity or sorority.
Order of the Arrow is a Boy Scout.
Okay, Order of the Arrow. Yeah, Hank's a Boy Scout too. There are elements of mystery, and part of the deal is that to be in, you define yourself by knowing the things on the inside, right? In PEO, what the letters stand for is a mystery until you're initiated, except that Neil Eriksmo, one of my parishioners in Fargo, said that it meant phone each other. He wasn't right, but it's really great. It's the women's organization. The mystery religions have these insider elements. And so when people didn't understand what was going on with Christians, they were wondering, what are they doing? They're drinking the blood of their God? What's that about? There's some kind of special relationship with the God in mystery religions, and you're assured of some individual, personal, particular benefit. Whether it's to kind of escape fate, directing your whole life, which is a common idea in the period, or to receive immortality. The mystery religions offer these kinds of benefits. And think about the Corinthians and how they're interested in wisdom. And Paul rejects this and says that he can play that game with wisdom and all of that, but what he decides to know is not some secrets or great wisdom, but Jesus Christ and Him crucified. So Paul rejects this sense that to be Christian is to have insider knowledge. It happens in Acts as well, where the Christians in Acts keep saying, "This wasn't done in a corner. We've been out there all the time, clear, public about our message." But it seems to have been something that Christians had to defend against. There are secrets there, some kind of mystery religion that only the initiated are really in the know on.